Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer. The DRF race of the day for Wednesday, April the 24th. Race number 9 at Tampa Bay Downs will conclude the card with a 1-mile event on the turf. It's a $20,000 claimer for 3-year-olds. Let's take a peek at this field. We've got 9 in here, and as you can see from the morning line, it's a pretty evenly matched group. You have several horses coming out of a common race, Mike. That was way back on the Ides of March, where the number 6, Tap the Sky, finished third ahead of 3 of these horses. But our morning line favorite is the 2, City Leader, coming off a very impressive maiden win.
Yeah, that horse was very good last time. It took City Leader, it seems like, a little while to put it all together. Maybe he did that last time, Dan. He also happens to have really good tactical speed, and that could lead to a very good trip for him in this race.
That's an excellent segue into our Timeform US pace projector. As we see the number 3, Call the Ball, stretching out off the layoff. This horse should show speed in his initial route appearance. My Great Illusion went gate to wire against Maiden Claimers last time out, but City Leader is likely going to be close.
Yeah, I think he's just going to fall into a trip here. He's got an inside post with tactical speed, and it does kind of feel like both the 1 and the 3 are horses who are going to be forward in this race. If they both go, it could just lead to City Leader falling into a perfect spot behind them.
It also could help the number 9, Crowned Jewel. Note the LP flag over his chiclet. That means he has the fastest Timeform US late pace rating. And in his most recent turf appearance, this horse did not get a fast pace to attack. So perhaps a completely different scenario this time for Crowned Jewel. But we'll start things off by taking a look at the number 1, My Great Illusion, winning in his 9th lifetime start. It's only a $16,000 maiden claimer. He was the favorite. At first glance, I wondered maybe he just caught the right field in this race, Mike, but he looked good. He earned a solid enough buyer speed figure, and he's tactical.
Yeah, all those things are true. We'll see how fast this pace gets, I guess, Dan, because it does feel like he maybe want to go forward in this race, and it kind of feels like the 3 is going to show speed as well. So we'll see how fast they go. Listen, he ran fine last time. He had all the best of it in there. And his other races just don't really do a lot for me. So we'll see. I feel like he should be a pretty good price in this race, though.
The number 2, City Leader, you could always tell these connections had high hopes for him. He took money in all of his races last year, especially at Laurel, where I thought he ran sneaky well in his debut, despite being very, very green. He was trying to lug in all the way through the stretch after being steadied at about the 5/16 pole. Maybe he just needed this class drop, and maybe he just needed to mature a bit, because this is a breakout performance. He sat a very nice trip in behind horses on the inside, and when it was time to go, he went.
Yeah, it kind of does seem like he put it all together here. I mean, you're right. Maybe he just needed to grow up a little bit. He was pretty disappointing when they dropped him off the layoff 2 starts back. And so they cut him in half for this race. And then he makes an early move. The pace was actually solid. He made an early move. He took over a long way from home, and he just never gave that field a chance. It kind of feels like maybe the light bulb went off for him, Dan. And if it did, this field could be in big trouble.
Both the 1 and the 2 are stepping up in class. You have several other horses coming into this race where their last turf race came in that March 15th event where they were all bunched up. If you don't like any of those horses, why not the 3, Call the Ball, making his turf debut with a very strong turf pedigree. He's by DeMarchelier, who is a good turf horse, and he's out of a half to Interpretation, who won the Joe Hirsch Turf Classic. So this horse has speed, route pedigree, and he's going to perhaps get to the front in here.
All those things make him really interesting. It feels like, he won first time out by showing speed in a short sprint. And it feels like he beat a terrible field that day when you go back and look at it. But then he faced a much better field last time. I didn't think he was that disappointing. And as you've already pointed out, he's bred to be a turf router. He finally gets to do that here in his 3-year-old debut, and he gets to do it against pretty nondescript field here. I mean, there's nobody to be afraid of. He'll have Lasix for this. Feels like he's properly spotted. A lot to like.
The 4 is Pirate Radio. He's one of the horses coming out of that March 15th race, and I just thought he might have been able to get second if he had a clear run in the stretch. He was sort of over and behind horses in the lane. I didn't think he really had a clear run. It's not like he was firing hard, but they were all struggling behind the runaway winner.
Yeah, the winner of that race just dominated on the lead at 3-5, and nobody really had a chance at him. To me, it was just hard to really get behind any of the horses that chased him home in there, Dan. It's not like anybody, at least in my opinion, did that much running. At least in the case of Pirate Radio, I think you could just go back through his overall form and say, you know what, he's just a better turf horse. His first 3 starts on the grass, he showed some speed against better horses in those races, and then they just tried to make him a synth horse for some reason, and none of those performances were all that good, even though he won there when they dropped him way down. I feel like he's just a better turf horse.
The angle for the number 5, Summer Storm Strick, is that this is going to be his first appearance at Tampa Bay against facing arguably better down at Gulfstream Park. His most recent race was his first start as a gelding, and he had absolutely no chance the way that race shaped up. For a 1-mile event, they went 49-2, and this horse is last on the rail turning for home. He very briefly made a bid along the inside and upper stretch, then flattened out. He might get a better pace scenario against kinder competition.
Could work out better for him here, and he already kind of fits on figures anyway, so I don't think he's a horse you necessarily want to take lightly. My main issue with him, Dan, is first of all, I didn't think he'd be a great price in here. I'm not sure how good he is, and he's just one of those horses, even in his races where he gets himself into position, he always loses ground late in his races. I don't like that about him.
Tap the Sky finished ahead of 3 of these common rivals in that March 15th turf race. You could also argue he had the best trip of those horses because the pace was very slow. He was sitting behind the odds-on winner. He was very, very game to hold second in between horses. It looked like he wasn't going to do it the entire length of the stretch. He earned a very respectable 63 buyer. He's tactical. There are things to like. I wonder how much upside is left.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at least in his case, he's very lightly raced as a turf horse. Only 2 starts on the grass. The last time they ran him on it, he ran fine. I'm kind of with you. He had one of the better trips in that race and wasn't, even close to good enough there. Maybe he can do better in this race then, but I'd want a pretty big price.
Yeah, he was 3rd that day in a photo finish. Best of the horses coming out of this race. Aloha Man was 4th. He sort of got into a good position going into the first turn, then sort of was shuffled out a little bit down on the backstretch. I thought all in all, there weren't that many excuses.
Me either. I didn't think there were excuses. Again, I didn't think there were excuses for anybody behind that, dominant wire-to-wire winner there. This horse just, to me, didn't run that well. On the flip side of that, I guess his prior turf start was a pretty good one. He had another good trip that day, and maybe he'll get a good trip here.
Lots of changes for the 8. Papadou coming up to Tampa Bay after racing on the Tapeta at Gulfstream Park, making his turf debut. I don't see a ton of turf pedigree here, but again, this horse is pretty tactical, and it's possible he's been facing better horses for a high percentage barn. The 3rd place finisher from the last race came back to win a $16,000 starter on the Tapeta with a 59 buyer.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, listen, he's not, I don't think you'd look at his pedigree and go through it a little bit and say, yeah, he's going to be better on turf, but he's got enough pedigree to handle it. He's a new face to this group, and I feel like this is the kind of race where maybe you want a horse like that, and he goes out for a really, really good trainer at what might be a fair price.
And back to turf for the 9, Crown Jewel, who I just don't think really cared for the race flow in that turf race 2 starts back. He was sort of steadied in the early stages, then pulled hard down towards the rail at the back behind a slow pace, got to the far outside in the stretch and couldn't make up any late ground. I think he's a little bit more tactical than that.
I do too. It was kind of surprising that they just rated him back to last in that race the way that they did there. And listen, it wasn't a great performance, but it wasn't a terrible one either, where he basically had no chance. That was the first time they dropped him. And then he got rained off last time. So this is really a second start here for this tag. And maybe he's just a really nice fit here.
Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Top pick time, race number 9, Tampa Bay. Look for a price. I think 5 or 6 can win this race. We're both going to go with last out maiden winners. Maybe they have some upside. City Leader had always hinted that he could be at least a useful racehorse, and that last race might have been the coming out party.
Kind of feel like if he just can run that race back in here, he's going to be pretty tough, Dan. I'm going to take him on top. The other horse for me was the 3 for all the reasons we sort of laid out there. He's bred to do this. He's sort of unexposed at this point. Maybe he's just found the right field.
My great illusion, the number 1, is going to have to run better than his last race, that maiden claimer. I still think he does have a little bit of upside. And while he did go gate to wire in that race, and it is unlikely he'll make the lead with the stretch out sprinter here, I'm not going to pigeonhole him as a need the lead type. I think maybe he can sit a good trip from second. 2-3-1-8 for Mike, 1-6-7-9 for me. It's our Wednesday DRF race of the day, the 9th at Tampa Bay Downs. Best of luck.